Is Harwin Strong my father? Am I a bastard?
You are a Targaryen. That's all that matters.
Most people watched that scene and saw a mother protecting her son. A frightened boy asks an impossible question, and Rhaenyra does what any loving mother would do. She avoids the painful truth and gives him something reassuring to hold on to. It's one of those quiet, tender beats people remember warmly, a small act of love in a show that doesn't hand out very many. Among fans, some read this moment as kindness, some as denial, some as a mother and son sharing a secret they'll never say out loud. Either way, it's a moment of respite. But there was nothing comforting about that scene, because in that moment, Jacaerys Velaryon was doomed. Most people heard a mother reassuring her son. What actually happened was a death sentence, handed down in 4 words, and it took 2 seasons to carry out. Season 1, Episode 6. A boy asks if he's a bastard, and instead of answering, his mother tells him the only thing that matters is being a Targaryen, which is the one thing he can never be sure he is. Everything that ended in the gullet begins in that room. Let me take you through how this one line ruined him, because once you see what Rhaenyra actually caused, you can't unsee it. First, you have to understand where that question came from. On paper, Jacaerys was the true-born son of Rhaenyra Targaryen, and second in line to his mother's claim. But one look at him tells you otherwise. The brown hair, the brown eyes, and the face with an unmistakable resemblance to Sir Harwin Strong. Next, we have to examine who Harwin was to Rhaenyra. She and Harwin found each other in a world where neither was free to choose. She was the king's chosen heir, bound to a marriage with Rhaenor that could shield her claim, but never give her a life. He was a knight of House Strong, close enough to the throne to love her, never high enough to have her. So what they had was an affair, secretive and obvious all at once. Not a romance the court would name, not a marriage. Harwin was simply the man who looked at Rhaenyra without fear, without politics, without any need to control her. And Rhaenyra, for all her defiance, found in him something simple: comfort, loyalty, desire, and love. Everybody in the realm knew about the relationship and the fact that he was her children's father, but they all pretended not to. It was the worst kept secret at court, but also one dangerous enough that a man lost his head for daring to say it out loud. This is because in Westeros, a bastard inherits nothing. If Jace is Harwin's son, then his name, his claim, his entire future rests on a fiction the whole court can see straight through. He already knows this. He's no fool, and he's worn the suspicious glances and the cruel comments his whole life. The wound is already there before episode 6 starts, but it's shapeless, a vague dread that he hasn't found the words for yet. That's what makes this scene so important, because all his mother manages to do is sharpen that dread to a fine point. So he asks her. Watch what her answer does, and what it carefully doesn't do. She doesn't say, "No, you're not a bastard." She can't, because it would be a lie, and they both know it. So she redirects and tells him the question doesn't matter, because being a Targaryen is the only thing that counts. Think about what a frightened boy would actually hear in that sentence. She has just told him that the one thing standing between him and worthlessness is the exact thing the entire realm doubts he is. Most fans heard a mother lifting a burden off her son's shoulders, but really, she handed him the measuring stick he would use to judge himself for the rest of his life. And here's the cruel reality of the situation. In Jace's world, there is only one thing that can prove a brown-haired boy is a true Targaryen. Not his name, and not his hair, but his dragon. So Vermax stops being a mount and becomes the proof instead. The one argument Jace can make that the realm cannot refute. And a boy whose entire identity rests on a dragon is a boy who can never stop flying. Watch how fast it surfaces. At the welcome feast in King's Landing, the very same day his great-uncle Vaemond was beheaded for calling the boys bastards out loud, Jace raises his cup to the uncles who had publicly questioned his birth. Steady hand, gracious words. The audience sees composure, and his mother sees a boy growing up. But it's neither. Instead, it's a boy discovering that he can perform legitimacy in public, while the wound bleeds in private. It works well enough that putting on a new face becomes the whole strategy. From here on, that is what Jace does. He performs, he volunteers, he flies, and then he designs the strategy that kills his brother. At the council table on Dragonstone, Jace argues that he and Luke should carry their mother's messages themselves. Dragons fly faster than ravens, and a prince on a dragon is more convincing than a letter. He's not wrong, but he has just established the doctrine that will define the war, that royal children with dragons aren't children at all. They're weapons. It's this doctrine that sends Luke to Storm's End. Luke flies as an envoy, a boy, on a boy's dragon, and Aemond and Vhagar tear them apart. Luke's death screams a warning, but Jace does not hear it. He can't, because backing away from the doctrine would mean admitting that he too is just a boy on a young dragon. So instead of flinching, he leans in. The first episode of Season 2 hands him an even clearer warning, in a language he refuses to hear. At the wall, Cregan Stark tells Jace that the Great Barrier doesn't keep out weather or wildlings, it keeps out death. And he recalls that long ago, the dragons of King Jacaerys and Queen Alysanne, the greatest power in the world, flew to that wall and refused to cross it. The lesson is a simple one. Even dragons know there are lines that they should not cross. Jace takes this in with the polite skepticism of a boy who decided to dismiss Cregan's warning before he's finished delivering it. This is because for Jace, it's much more than a warning. It's existential. If dragons have limits, then his dragon has limits, and a dragon with limits is an identity with limits. So he files the whole thing under northern superstition and flies home to a war. A few episodes later, driven by that same desperate need to prove himself, Jace ups the ante. Denied a role in the fighting by every man at the table, Jace slips away on Vermax to meet with the Freys, swearing Baelor to secrecy until he's already in the air. He lands in a hostile castle and stages a power play, demanding the Freys bend the knee. It's a teenager doing something genuinely dangerous to prove he's a man. And this is what should have tripped every alarm in his mother's mind. But instead, she praises him. Many watched that scene and saw a mother finally giving her son his due. What actually happened was the most dangerous thing she could possibly have done. She rewarded the behavior that was going to get him killed. She looked at a son who had gone rogue, lied to his betrothed, and gambled his life to soothe a wound she had opened. And she told him she was proud. It's episode 6 all over again. Instead of recognizing the dangerous pattern, she validates him. And this time, the praise comes with a prize, a seat at the war table. And then Jace starts projecting his core insecurity onto others. When Rhaenyra, desperate after Rook's Rest, opens the hunt for new dragon riders to low-born bastards, Jace, the boy who first suggested finding new riders, is furious. He calls them mongrels. He tells his mother that he could always argue his claim because he had a dragon, and if any bastard off the street can claim one too, then what is left of him? Take away the dragon, and he is a brown-haired boy with a borrowed name, and the whole realm can see it. And there it is, the open wound. The idea that Rhaenyra planted back in Season 1, stated plainly many years later by a young man whose entire sense of self comes from his connection to a single animal. Which brings us to the night the inevitable locked in place. In the Dragonstone Library, Baelor finds Jace brooding, and she does what no one has done for him in 2 seasons. She tells him the truth. The dragons don't make him, that he is the son of the rightful queen and her heir, no matter who his father was, that he isn't the first high-born heir who wasn't sired by his noble father, and that resenting it only makes him smaller than he really is. This is the most important moment in the whole story, and also the easiest to miss. Baelor is handing Jace a lifeline, the one his mother refused to give in Season 1. She's telling him that he is enough, with or without the dragon. But he cannot hear it. The wound is too deep. Across the sea, the Triarchy commits its fleet to break the blockade at the gullet, and the battle is set. And the great dragons that once refused the wall now answer new riders, and follow them wherever they fly. Everyone who matters knows what Jace and the audience have known for 2 seasons, that Vermax is among the smallest, lowest flying dragons in the war, the youngest of the strike force flying into that battle, dwarfed by the other dragons, and far more vulnerable to enemy firepower. And Rhaenyra gives him his place at the table anyway, because by now she genuinely cannot tell the difference between her son becoming a man and her son running toward his own death. So when the battle comes, and Jace flies into the gullet on a dragon too young for it, and Vermax is shot out of the sky and into the water, it isn't a surprise. It's inevitable. Now go back to that room one last time. Watch the scene again with everything you now know. A boy asks his mother if he's a bastard. She pauses, and she tells him the only thing that matters is being a Targaryen. A mother tries to spare her son from a painful truth, but instead she hands him the one weapon that could destroy him, and calling it love. By the time Baylor came up with the right answer, it was already too late. So tell me in the comments, when do you think Jace was actually doomed? Was it that moment in Season 1? Or was it when the dragon seeds came to challenge his identity as a dragon rider? And if you want more of this, make sure to subscribe. There are many more of these moments buried across both seasons, and we're going to be uncovering every single one. See you next time.